So what I was talking about originally was the book that we came across, The Social Contract, which was written in the mid-1700s. And in there, he addresses the word liberty. He mentions it several times. And then in one paragraph, he actually goes on to talk about the subject matter of that particular word and how he didn't want to address it in this particular book, but that it was a whole nother subject of its own for a whole nother book. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And so in my studies of the root word, at least in the Greek, the word liberty actually is the Greek word exousia, which is the power or authority, and it actually means the right to choose, the power of choice, liberty of doing as one pleases. And most oftentimes, I mean, when you talk to Bible scholars and people of that nature, they'll quote Romans 13, which basically tells you to obey the governing authorities, obey the higher power. The higher power, that word power there actually is translated as exousia, and it means liberty, the right to choose. And so basically what it's saying in that particular, the construct of that particular scripture is not necessarily that we are to be subject to kings under the divine right of kings, but we're to remain in the capacity to do as we feel free or led to do, meaning what we choose to do, free will. And I believe this directly ties into UCC 5-116, which deals with your choice of forum and law. And so,
can I make a comment about that real quick?
Sure.
Well, see, I had the complete biblical library at one point in time, which was all the New Testament in the Greek, and it was broken down, and it was 17 volumes. It was pretty much like a Britannica encyclopedia set. Way more expansive work than Strong's Concordance ever thought about being.
Right.
I'm pretty sure the word there is actually dunamis, but it doesn't really matter. We're getting to the same principle here, because in a lot of the conferences I do and a lot of the teachings that I've done and the blogs and everything that are up on the web, I'm always talking about higher principle. You've heard me talking about higher principles. Whether I believe that everything is 100% accurate in any book on this planet, and my contention is that nothing is 100% accurate on this planet, and I mean nothing. Well, okay, I could write down 2 + 2 on a piece of paper, and that one piece of paper, if I said it equals 4, that would be accurate, okay? Other than that, all this stuff from history is stuff that people really can't prove. Now, the Greek transcripts were taken by this particular group and put into this 17-volume set, and they would actually talk about how it was used in the classical Greek, the New Testament, and the Septuagint, all at the same time. I mean, it was expansive. 6 volumes of it were reference volumes alone. Now, the reason I'm getting into that real quick is just what we really are talking about is higher principle. Your ability to choose and to create choice, because you're a creator. We were put here to create choice. We were put here to take dominion. And when they said in the Declaration of Independence that we're going to assume our separate and equal station, separate, equal, among the powers of the earth, they were choosing to no longer give up their power to someone else.
Right. And so that's what it comes down to, is the freedom and the right to choose, the right to create for yourself the alternative of choice. And without the responsibility and exercise of choice, a man is not a member but an instrument, a thing. So, and this is what it comes down to, is, you know, are men property of the state, or do they have the right and ability to choose whatever form of governance that they wish to occupy and pass down to their own posterity? But
now you said that that's in the book, though, that this thing that if a man doesn't choose, then he's a tool, he's an instrument,
but a member of a thing. Yeah. And so I mean it kind of breaks it down.
Hang on one second, I got to turn this off. Hold on, because that's
where you owe your quote unquote liege or allegiance. Just going back to the biblical in the Old Testament, and I was just reading it. If it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose this day whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the God of the Amorites, in whose land ye dwell. But the principle comes to this: depending on whatever form of government that you wish to choose and to vest your power of choice into, which then in turn feeds that system, some call it the beast system or whatever you want to call it, the principle comes to this: go and cry unto the gods which ye have chosen, let them deliver you in your time of tribulation. And so I believe what it's saying there, the word God can be translated as ruling judges. And so we know that under the 9 case laws, what can happen when you put yourself in a position to be basically charged for a crime that was never committed, in those various case laws that we've seen so often times, on the website.
I'll get into what you're talking about in just a second, because I want to hit on this. We mentioned it before, I think in Samuel 1 or something like that. And I'm not trying to necessarily go off on a tangent, because to me this ain't about Bibles and scriptures and Islam and all that kind of stuff, although a lot of law comes out of, quote, religious writings and so forth.
And how history repeats itself over and over and over again. You could look at any society and any culture and any book, and you're going to find the same underlying tie. So
yeah, the same problem. They've asked for a king, and that's why it's saying you ask for a human God, you ask for a king. Now when you go through this tribulation, let him deliver you. And the problem is, according to their book, that book or whatever, if you've allied yourself with an unrighteous king, you're probably going to get back unrighteousness.
Right. And these types of governments operate on privileges granted to them by the mob rule, by the majority. And we know that the majority is the slothful, the greedy, and people of that covetous nature that wish to rob Peter to give to Paul.
See, we want to do this, and I'm going to do this coming up, and I need to go into screen share with you so we can get into the presentation that we're really going to do, which is a continuation of extrication and nationality. And this will be kind of like putting the final nail in the coffin as far as what naturalization is. Well, I take that back. There will be one more, because I'm going to go through the document that was done by the Casey Research Institute. If we have time, we'll go through it here today. I don't know how long we want to make this particular presentation. This could be the end of it, because I'm not going to continue to go through a process that's really not self-determination. But it is important, because people are going to get their heads handed to them by believing in these other processes: renunciation, going to be a naturalized citizen of another jurisdiction, particularly if you're an American, because right now they may not want you. And if you're not coming with something in hand, I can tell you right now, they do not want you. Before we get into that, you brought up something that I would like to address, because I've done a whole blog on that comment that you did related to silent weapons for quiet wars, but you didn't talk about it. I just launched off into it. The blog is on my computer. I haven't finished it yet, and we may do it together where we just talk about it, because I don't even remember what your comment was. It doesn't matter. I know I did a whole writing on it, and there's a lot of writings I've done, a lot of editing I still have to do in terms of bringing more information forward. I have more time now, and after the first of the year, people better get ready, because if they want education, it's just going to depend on how much your butt can handle sitting in a seat, okay? Because it's coming. Believe me. I don't know if people can handle me 10 hours a day, because almost everything I do around here, I'm not trying to be arrogant about it, but I'm a walking presentation. People who've been around me now, and they're on conferences with me, you and I have done screen share, and I've had other people listening to me or talking to me. They've seen my screen when I'm just doing Skype, because I'll be on with them and they're doing screen share, and they're looking at what I'm typing to somebody else, and they're like, why don't you put that up for a blog? This is good material. See, the only reason I'm saying this is, in the presentation that's going up today, before this one goes up, people are asking me, what should I do? Now, I ran business, and at night we studied 4, 5, 6 hours a night, okay? Non-stop. This was non-stop all the time. Extreme times call for extreme knowledge, and you already know that. You're doing it. It's why I'm doing the recordings with you, because you're pulling out information now. You're finding things that I haven't found yet, and it's good material. But this is how a nation state, this is how people come together in a social compact and work together.
As a team.
Exactly. No one person can do everything. No one person can do everything. And quite frankly, I like the relief, thank you very much, because I've been a one-man band for a long time, like a one-armed paper hanger or something. The things I'm doing in Haiti, the things I'm trying to get done in the Philippines right now, I'm getting prices on 38 hospital beds that need to go down to the Philippines. He's talking to the mayor over 5 cities down there about getting them moved into the Philippines. Anthony just went back to Haiti today. Dr. Painter, I just recorded him yesterday. I may put it up on as a blog. I don't know if I am or not. But Dr. Painter has been in Haiti 170 days out of the past year.
Right.
You know, my thing is to have other things in place. And at the same time, you know, my resolve has changed quite a bit from what it was last year. in being apologetic and not already having the nation state up and running or whatever, as if I'm supposed to be some.
Well, there's a saying that
I need people on the team. I need people to do this together. The founding fathers of the United States, there was none of them sitting there going, well, when you guys get it built, come call me and I'll come back and help you and sign that declaration.
What's the saying? If you build it, they will come. Well, if we got to build it ourselves, we don't want you to come. We need help building it.
Yeah, and so it's a team effort. It's always going to be a team effort. That was what my prayer meditation was last year when I did this and came up with the idea, was that build the education, let the cream rise to the top. I've tried this 3 times, with people that were on paperwork that we wrote, some of us, a core group, and the others did not understand it. So everybody's going to be at different levels, but people have to at least have a basis of understanding. And you heard me the other day on the phone with that guy that called in here from out of California. You were on Skype, he was on the phone, and you listened to me do a 20-minute download on him.
Yeah.
And the 20-minute download was, he wanted to know where to sign right now. I told him, I said, there's 6 months worth of material on my website right now for you to study. And until other people that are part of the core group, and other people are already asking this question, Joey, how do I know who I'm signing the compact with? How do I know? I mean, I'm willing to sign with you. I trust you now because we've been talking. I've listened to your presentations. I see your sincerity, all those kind of things. And believe me, the sincerity's there because I've put 10 years of my life into this.
And so there's no way in which to create the compact and still leave every individual separate and autonomous. That way one person can't necessarily
you can't do that. No one has ever done this throughout time in that manner. No one has. That book you just pulled up when the social compact talks about there's no such thing as unlimited sovereignty. I talked about it when I did the presentation and put up that book on intervention in international law. There's no such thing as unlimited sovereignty. And people who want liberty, they're just like some drunken sailor who wants to get off the boat and go cause chaos in town. I told somebody that today. I've seen this with the patriots before that I've been around for all these years. They go teach their children that they're sovereign and they can tell the government just to shove it and shoot them to bird. And the next thing you know, you got these kids running through a school zone at 85 miles an hour, causing utter havoc and utter chaos. Even the United States manuals on diplomacy says the key to diplomacy is manners. So there's a lot more to this than people ever wanted to realize. And I'm glad we're having this conversation as a prelude to this. I talked to a conference on Saturday, 20, 30 people on there, and one particular woman kept asking me questions. And I told her the same thing I told the guy the other day with the 20-minute download. You need to be on my website for at least 6 months before you're even going to become proficient, because you have to understand certain principles. Like you just said, the federated state is viewed as a sole person. Where we go one, we go all. And if someone can't develop enough decorum within themselves to not get everyone else into trouble, then that will be a problem. They will get.
Don't you think that the principle lies in that you have to understand that the founders did not create the United States of America for us? I mean, that has to be like embedded in people's skulls, because it's from that principle then you can graduate and then come to the understanding that, okay, well, if they didn't do it for us, then we need to step up and do something for ourselves and our posterity. And that means leaving them alone, because you don't want to necessarily violate their intellectual property rights and create chaos in the international public order.
Well, and the simple concept of saying that what they did is mine, that's a tort.
Right.
That's a trespass. That is a complete violation of the international public order. I'm not party to those agreements, and I'm not their posterity. They didn't do it for me.
That's coveting your neighbor's goods. I mean,
absolutely, absolutely. Now, what you just said, and we'll cover this real quick. I want to backtrack now. Let's go backwards a little bit and get to where you were, and then we'll move forward with putting this nail in the coffin on nationality and naturalization, so that people don't go out here and start thinking they can do other things and fly off to other countries. Look, I got friends of mine right now. Just talked to one yesterday. He said, I'm going to Panama. Well, if you're lucky, you'll get to Panama. If they don't kick you back over here, if they allow you to be a national, if you can get through the process over there, And by the way, we'll cover that on timelines too. This hasn't even been discussed about how long you have to be in a country. United States is 5 years before you can even apply for nationality here. Okay? What you just said, let's cover this. At the Revolution, the sovereignty devolved on the people, meaning the ones that signed the compact, and I'll show you how I know it's the ones that signed the compact. They are truly sovereigns of the country, but they are sovereigns without subjects. Well, how could they be without subjects? They own slaves.
Right.
And we've already seen in the other book, we'll cover that a little bit too. I've been telling people for a long time that the words citizen, national, subject are all the same thing. And you've seen it in some of my writings. I call it subject, citizen, debtor, slaves. We're going to get to that book in just a second. Yeah, I found it in writing. We'll show it in just a few minutes, okay? Anyway, they had none to govern but themselves. So the 55 men, they come up, they run the business as a cartel. They run the nation state as a cartel. They all sit at the table equally. All 55 of them. They pledged their life, fortune, and sacred honor to each other. That means they were willing to die for each other, put all their money where their mouth was, and marry one another, okay? So the citizens of America, and this is what it says here, the citizens of America are equal as fellow citizens and as joint tenants in the sovereignty, meaning their sovereignty. So they established their sovereignty by the compact, by the social compact like we're talking about. But they didn't do it for everyone else. Otherwise, everybody else wouldn't have been a tenant and wouldn't have been a citizen. They would have been a sovereign.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And that goes into the whole language rabbit hole.
Now let's go into backtrack one more time. You were talking about asking your king for a remedy, asking your king to come to your defense according with whatever verse that you just read a few minutes ago. Well, are they going to do that? Let's go forward where we are now. This book, Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars, where they said they declared war on the United States population in 1954 to wipe this place out. And believe me, it's coming, okay? At the next presentation after this one, I'm going to do an interlude. That goes up. This presentation goes next. Then there'll be another interlude. You just listen to it, and it's already edited, ready to go. So there's going to be a plethora of information coming out here in the next few days. All right. They declared war. So part of what they talked about in the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars is creating these artificial wombs, which is the nation state. I call it the ultimate asset protection program, because the desire is to withdraw into artificial wombs after you leave your mother's womb, because why? It was protective. Okay? Nothing wrong with having a protective device. The object of the artificial womb is to provide a stable environment for both stable and unstable activity, to provide shelter for the evolutionary process of growth and maturity. Nothing wrong with this. Okay? Provide security and freedom, and provide defensive protection for offensive activity. Well, I don't really care about the word offensive activity, but let's just give them the benefit of the doubt. That's okay. It's no big deal. It's equally true of both the general public and the elite. However, there's a definite difference in the way each of these classes goes about the solution to the problem. I've been saying this. This ain't about the common man. It's about the uncommon man. Yeah. If you want to be the common man and do what's been commonly done, then you're going to go the way of the dodo, because all republics, all empires last 219 years on average. On average. I'll never forget, all these people wanted Ron Paul to be president, and I heard him on Fox News say 3 different times, we have to protect the American empire around the world. And I'm sitting here going, this man's an imperialist. Who wants him?
Right. It's about a 200 to 400 year cycle is what I found in my studies. I mean, just for example, when you take Christopher Columbus, who quote unquote founded the United States. I mean, he came here in 1609. Now we're up to past 2009, so we're just right about at that mark.
Oh, well, you can't call it that back then, though, because they didn't do the Constitution until 1789. Right. They were running under the British Empire at that point in time, which is still part of the empire. Okay, so I'll give you the benefit. Right. I will say, okay, I'll back up. I'll agree with you on that. Yeah. And British Empire, sun never sets on it. Okay, got it. Now it's the banking cartel. Anyway, the political structure. The primary reason why individuals, citizens of a country, create a political structure is a subconscious desire or wish to perpetuate their own dependency relationship of childhood. Simply put, they want a human god to eliminate all risk from their life, pat them on the head, kiss their bruises, put a chicken on every dinner plate, clothe their bodies, tuck them into bed, and tell them that everything will be all right when they wake up in the morning. The public demand is incredible, so the human god, the politician, meets this incredibility with incredibility by promising the world and delivering nothing.
Right. So that goes to that old ancient maximum: protection draws subjugation, and subjugation draws protection.
Well, there you go. Maxim. See, the maxim, universal higher principle. That's what a maxim is. It's a higher power.
When you're asking someone to take care of you, you can't complain in the manner in which they take care of you.
Let's go back to the word. Let's go back to the word allegiance. The word allegiance is a promise. When you pledge allegiance to that flag, that's your promise.
Right.
That's your promise.
That's what binds you.
You can't complain now. It's too late.
Correct.
Okay, so who's the bigger liar here, the public or the Godfather that they're asking for? This public behavior is surrender born of fear, laziness, and expediency, and is the basis of the welfare state as a strategic weapon useful against a disgusting public. Now, this is how they feel about it. This ain't my message. I used to understand being part of that disgusting public until I figured out 10 years ago that the word republic meant to make public again. That meant all my affairs were public. I was public. I was owned as public. They turned me into a piece of cattle or chattel.
Right.
CH being a K sound throughout time. Cattle.
So essentially what you're saying is we need to kind of be free from things public and get back on the private side of things.
It's what private international law is all about. And now, this is the reason why, I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's go back. It's the reason why looking at nationality, naturalization, and renunciation and all those kind of methods are important in relationship to what we're talking about, and comparing it to the other method, which is self-determination. So where I want to start with this, I mentioned in the last blog that Brad, someone who came to visit here, had written an email, and I kind of want to go through that email with you. Hold on one second. I'm going to pop us into screen share so you can see this.
All right.
Okay, did that come up for you?
Yeah, gotcha.
Good. Okay, this is the email. I've put it into a Word doc so I could expand the print and it's easier to read. And this was where he was talking about the 1933 Convention on Nationality, which was in the 7th International Conference of American States that was held in Montevideo, and the United States of America, United States being a signatory to this treaty. The question came up really not whether or not it was still in effect because of what he was looking at on this website, state.gov. And treaties. Okay. Now, I want to ask you a question because you've read it. Is there case law that says you can't trust the U.S.?
Absolutely.
What does it say? It says you cannot trust their pronouncement. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So understand that the website is not gospel, and what he actually said here was that he was going to say that I don't think it's in effect. I was about ready to email you with I don't think it's in effect, but he changed his mind because he finally went onto their website and it says the absence of a listing of a particular agreement should not be regarded as a determination that it's not in force. So just because they didn't list this conference on their little website here doesn't mean it's not in force.
Right.
Okay, so that's the gist of his email. I won't go into any more of it than that. Now, my email back to him was to go into what we're going to go into now. Basically, I'm going to summarize and not go through all this because the bottom line of it is this is not how treaties work. Treaties, they cannot just say, okay, that's no longer in effect. As a matter of fact, the procedure is if you want to withdraw from a treaty, there has to be very specific guidelines you can do it in, and it doesn't even take effect for 1 year. Even if you do it right, it takes you a year to get off the treaty. And you would have to have a very good reason of fraud, misrepresentation, or something by all the rest of the family of nations to get off of that thing.
Right.
Although you still can because they regard state sovereignty, the sovereignty of the nation, the sovereignty of the state, as being supreme. Not unlimited, but supreme. Okay? There's a difference. Which is why international treaties, we've been through it. We've talked about it out of the International Conference of American States. We've talked about it out of the Intervention in International Law, where it says that all nations are agents of the law of nations to enforce international law. We live on a planet, okay? It's global. And it has been global for a long time.
I mean,
I just mentioned
the land masses are interconnected, the people are interconnected.
Exactly.
There's no way around it.
Well, according to the book you've been talking about a while ago, it says kind mates after kind. That would make all of us the same kind.
Right. We're all breath.
People can talk about races all they want to, and the word race actually means thing. It means a thing. That's what the word race means. It comes from the word res. It means a thing. So human races means human things.
That's interesting that it means res. I mean, when you look at some of the admiralty terms, in res, which is attached to your persona.
Right. Okay, let's go and let me go on with this. These are the things we're going to cover because I sent him all these links right here. This Google book and all these links that we're going to be looking at here, scribed and so forth. As a matter of fact, that one might not be on there. Let me click on this real quick. I don't know if I have that one up, but it will be in a sec. All right, what I want to do here, let's go into nationality, and let's just get to the basis of what all of this stems from in international law, how it has progressed. And the progression really comes forward to the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, okay?
Yeah.
If we go down to Article 15, it says right here, everyone has a right to a nationality. In other words, you don't have to be stateless. Everyone has a right to a nationality. No one shall arbitrarily be deprived of his nationality or denied the right to change his nationality. Now, you can't be denied the right, but there are conditions. If you try to change your nationality, let's go back to the example I said somebody may go back to Panama. They may do a background check on you. If you're a criminal in the other jurisdiction that you're leaving, or you're a major debtor, you're trying to abscond and not pay your debts and stuff like that, they'll send you back.
Right.
Okay, and you better be coming with something in hand anyway, because most nations already have enough nationals and they don't really want anybody that's going to be on their dole. When we moved to St. Kitts, being a U.S. citizen down there in St. Kitts, you have to have a plane ticket ready to leave in case they tell you to leave. You cannot take any of their jobs away from them because their jobs are for their nationals, and they actually prefer it if you're coming to start business or buy property, which we did. You know, paid cash for a $300,000 house. Okay, that was very nice for them. They loved it. You know, so we were giving something to the island, commerce. We did something there. Okay, we never did become nationals down there because back then it was $35,000 for a head of house. Today it's $200,000, and you must own property. Okay, so that's St. Kitts.
I wonder what the flip side is to that from somebody coming outside of the United States into the United States. I mean, is it the same?
No.
Do they have to contribute to the United States, own property and various things, or no?
No, but they become taxpayers right off. The difference down there is just there was no personal taxes in St. Kitts. There were duty fees, and there was a lot of money to get things through duty, through customs. A lot, 80%. So their taxing system was different. Now, if we go off of this premise and go to the next document, what I'm looking at here is, let me back up a sec. This is European Convention on Nationality. Okay, let's say the OAS doesn't exist. Who else is out there talking about nationality? This is the European Convention where all the European nations did it. You can see in here UNHR or HCR. This is the European Convention. If you go down, these would be the countries of Europe that did the Convention on Nationality. I'm not going to go through this. Let's go down and look at something that people haven't seen before. This is a chart of all the signatories with the ratification dates. European Convention on Nationality. And here's all the nations. All these guys have signed treaties on nationality. Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Moldavia, Monaco, all of them, okay? Your signature date, ratification date, entry into force in that country. There's others that haven't. Andorra, Armenia, they haven't. Now, this one was a newer one, so I bet that they are on older treaties, some of these older countries, because some of these have been around a long time, okay? And I'll prove that in just a second. Now, check this out. We've mentioned statelessness and how bad it is. They're actually doing conventions on avoidance of statelessness in relation to state secession, okay? This is how prolific international law is. This is no joke. Yeah, this is the Council of Europe.
Detailed.
This is the Council of Europe Convention on the Avoidance of Statelessness. So they're doing entire conventions on it. Yeah, look at this. They're doing entire conventions. Article 1, Article 3, Article 8. And these are done by leaders of universities and think tanks that come together to put these hash these issues out. Okay. Now, I mentioned that other countries may have been on previous documents, so let's look at the Hague Convention that they did in 1930. And I'm doing this specifically because let's assume the OAS doesn't exist. All right?
Yeah.
Do you know how many treaties the United States has signed?
I would venture to say thousands.
They're everywhere. And they have been highly involved in all of these issues, and I think this supplement actually has its own copy of the American Journal of International Law in the Hague Convention. Okay?
Very interesting.
The United States has been prevalent in international law in the last 230 years. And actually controlling it and forming it to a lot of degree.
Right.
One of the reasons is because specific...
Blazing the trail.
Do what?
They're blazing the trail, so to speak.
Well, one of the reasons is because they give so much humanitarian aid to buy off other leaders and they get them to do what they want to do.
Right.
That doesn't mean they always do, but the United States don't sign many treaties that they don't have an upper hand in, believe me.
Well, I mean, he who accepts the benefit also has to bear the disadvantages of attending it.
Yeah, where did you get that from?
Never
mind. Send it to me later. It don't matter. Send it to me later.
Yeah.
Okay, these are the official documents that came from this convention, all about children born of parents who are unknown and have no nationality, and there's so many issues that relate to this, okay? As you can see here, if we go back, there were other documents in here. This is table contents. This is short. It's PDF. That one's short on table contents. And the reason the table contents existed was because these are the official documents. This was like all the narrative information and what the committees kind of talked about, the things that they went over and so forth. And hang on one second, I got a phone. Hold on. Okay, sorry. Somebody I had called this morning that asked me to call them. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I said, these are just the narrative discussions that they put into these documents. And this is also part of the American Journal on International Law. The possibility, if occasion should arise, of states representing at the conference adopting amongst themselves rules accepted by majority vote. This stuff is so vast. It's really not complicated, because if you think about it, there has to be protocols set up for all these situations. In a lot of ways, they do run it like a military operation. But now there's a lot of leeway in there. I talked about the Code of the Brethren Court and the Code of the Brethren, the Pirates Code, where it says a loose set of guidelines. So states have autonomy and they come together by agreement. Oh, by the way, let me back up on one document. When I say they come together by agreement, I want to go through something here that I've skipped. Here's a list of the nations and their declarations and their reservations made with respect to Treaty Number 166. Okay, Albania, Austria. These are their declarations and reservations. They had a reservation on a certain item in Treaty Number 166. So you can voice a reservation to a treaty if you don't want to hold to part of it because it doesn't fit your national character.
And that is what, David? Variation by agreement?
Absolutely. Actually, it's not called
treaty.
It's called modification of treaty in the law of treaties, and we'll go through the law of treaties sometime later, because there's this stuff is massive, is what needs to be learned. It doesn't mean you have to know everything all at once, but this starts, as it did with me, changing my whole perspective on how the U.S. runs, what's going on here, who has rights, who didn't, and what's going on the globe, and international law and universal principles, and how things actually run. And the world runs better through international law and universal principles than it does this national stuff by you being a national citizen, resident, alien, or stateless inside this particular jurisdiction. Believe me. You mentioned the 9 cases earlier. They've been in other presentations. I'm not even going to bother to pull them up. Case 9 that we showed says an innocent person can be charged for a crime that never occurred, which means if that can happen to you here, you ain't got no rights.
No. Okay.
So let's go back over here and go to I want to go to the next document. I showed the table of contents. This is it, and I've got an outline here, Joey. We're going to go through real quick. You don't have it in front of you, but I have it in front of me. Now, the first thing I want to talk about with this, as I mentioned, if the OAS did not exist, okay, what does that mean? Well, let's go look at things that the U.S. is on. What other things have been signed? And this was done in 1930, which is 3 years before the little convention they did at Montevideo. Law of nationality. In here, I'm not going through these, okay? There's the web link. If you want to read them, there's 22 articles related to nationality. Then they get into things such as jus soli and jus sanguinis, which has to do with is the national character that puts you in a situation where you are of the soil or of the nation state itself. Okay? And these are items that are hotly debated inside each territory and at these conferences. Now, there's 22 articles in this. Okay? Then, because French is the secondary language, they're all written in French. So we go down past the French part, and what I want to do is go to the next part of this, which would be at page 21. This is all the introductory comments and commentary about those 22 articles, the law of nationality. And as you can see here, that's page 21, going down to page 22, after the introductory commentary, here's Article 1. Here are the comments and the commentary about the debates and how Article 1 came to be in this conference. I'm driving to a point here because I'm not going to cover this. I'm just driving to a point, okay? If you go down 3 more pages, you're going to find that they do the same thing with Article 2. It's the advisory opinion number 4. The Permanent Court of the International Justice held that the Council of the League of Nations was competent. Well, that's great. Did we know that this applied to treaties on nationality? And why wasn't the U.S. telling us this? Oh, I thought we were the sovereigns. Weren't we making the decisions? Did we give the United States permission to sign this stuff? Who wrote that advisory opinion number 4? Who is the Permanent Court of Justice? How did they get to determine that the League of Nations was competent?
Right.
Now,
yeah, I mean, when you talk about this, it's so vast, and people's understanding of this stuff has just been highly. I mean, it's not to say that they haven't disclosed this information, but this goes back to the public school and education system,
which is woefully inept, and we all know it. The point is that the school system is put there based off the old Indian caste system to make people servants and slaves. That's the real point of what you just said. Now, that commentary on all those articles goes from page 20 down to page 80. Then after page 80, we get into an appendix. Let me go through my notes here real quick. Jus soli, okay. Yeah, I want to talk about this, okay. This is appendix number 1. These are actually the signatory states, okay. That's what we're getting into here. These are the signers. Denmark. And this is on, you're going to see topics here. Let's talk about this. States whose laws are based on principally jus soli, but also contain provisions for jus sanguinis. So these are the states that have signed. Now, I may not have shown this in a presentation, Joey, but I know you've seen it in the 6th International Conference of American States, where it said that constitutional precepts are of an international public order, right?
Correct.
Now, this tells you in this Constitution of Brazil why Brazil is a state whose laws are based principally on jus soli, but also contain provisions for jus sanguinis. Same thing is true of Great Britain. It was an Aliens Act, Status of Aliens Act, Nationality and Status of Aliens Act in August the 7th, 1914. Okay, Palestine, Act of July 24, 1925. Article 5 in the Chile Constitution. Article 8. International public order. Constitutional precepts are of an international public order. Do you see the public order here?
Very detailed, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, look at all these countries, and this is just one subject, one convention, one treaty, one commentary on one subject.
Yeah, and we'll get back to that in just a second because, see, if you look up here, there's going to be states whose laws are based on jus soli and jus sanguinis. There are states whose laws are based solely on jus sanguinis. Okay? There are also, as it said, based on both, and that's where we actually get down to the United States of America, 14th Amendment Constitution, Section 1, Title 8. This is how nationality is based in the United States. That's where it comes from. Now, let's go down and look at some others of these. Oh, expatriation's on page 83. I want to cover that just quickly. You'll see what we got here. Page 83. Naturalization and expatriation. So this was another topic at this conference.
Very good.
Because it relates to naturalization. You can't expatriate unless you repatriate. We've already covered that. You end up stateless if you don't.
Correct. Yeah.
Stateless is the worst condition on this planet right now. FUBAR. Fouled up beyond all recognition.
Yeah.
That's why they did a whole entire conference on it that we just looked at just a minute ago. Okay?
Which is why you can't file tort claims when you don't have the standing to state a claim for which relief can be granted.
Exactly.
Because then you become stateless.
Now, this part here is what it does is it tells the branch of government that's affected in people's naturalization and expatriation, or which one's controlling it. This one is the legislative, executive, and the countries that are executive. Panama's in there. And then the countries that are judicial. And you can see here that the United States of America is judicial, and that act was passed in 1906. That expatriation out of the United States is a judicial matter handled by the judiciary. Okay. Let's go down here. Age requirements for naturalization. This one's interesting. I'm not trying to pick on any countries, but I got to do this, Joey. Okay. Yeah. This is the age requirement. Majority age means not stated in years, so they don't state their majority age in years in Britain, Greece, British India, Canada, different ones. They do in the U.S. I'll get to that in just a second. Here's one based on puberty. And I don't know if they're pulling anybody's pants down or not, but I don't know how they got to that one. It seems crazy, right? But anyway,
yeah.
But see, here's the thing. They're sovereign, and that's their national character. And you can laugh about it all day long, but I tell you what happens when their diplomats come over here to the United States, they have immunity. United States citizens don't. So if everybody thinks this is funny, laugh that one off, right?
I'm not laughing.
I am, because it's so... We've been taught so many of these rabbit hole programs, and when you look at this, I mean, I don't even know how long this presentation has gone on already. This is pretty detailed stuff. That's why I said it's going to be the final nail in the coffin about nationality and what we're looking at moving away from this and saying let's get back to self-determination. Okay. Age 20 for China, 21, 22. I'm sure it's 21 or 22. I'm not even going to go look for the United States of America. It's in there. People can go find it. Okay.
It's 18.
18?
It's 8. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Period of residence or domicile required. 1 year, Bolivia, Costa Rica. So if you want to go be a natural down there in those places, you got to be there for a year before you can do it. You can't just leave the U.S. and all of a sudden you're no longer a U.S. citizen. Even if you go renounce your citizenship at that consular's office, and I suggest if you're in Costa Rica, you better wait 1 year before you do it.
Otherwise, you might end up stateless.
Yeah, which means Costa Rica would ship your butt back to America. Because you'll be down there with no identification and no nothing. Okay, 3 years, Bulgaria. 5 years. 5 years is U.S. Oh, where did we go? United States of America, Subdivision 4, Act of June 29, 1906. So they're telling you, this is where we did it. Okay. I want to go to page 92. Why did I want to go to page 92? Where applicant was previously a national of a naturalized country, or naturalizing country, or of a particular race or nationality. What they're saying here is that they base some of your nationality and citizenship based on what they call ethnicity, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's not true everywhere. Matter of fact, it's not true in a lot of places. The United States of America is not, I believe. Oh, so race or nationality. So there is no determinant here. See, one of the things you have to understand is that you can't violate other treaties that you've done, okay? And what is one of the treaties that they have signed already? This one. This is the Universal Declaration on Human Rights. What does it say in here? You can't discriminate based on race, creed, and religion.
Right.
This was going to be my point with this. The countries, if you go back over here, the ones that are discriminating still based on race, creed, color, religion, and all that, if they're doing that here, then they're in violation of the other treaty over there.
Guess who's enforcing the international public order, which is what? The United States, which is why probably we're
That's why they
some of the places.
That's why they go pound on people. That's what they did to South Africa. Anti-apartheid, anti-genocide. You guys are discriminating. You violated your treaty. We're the enforcement arm in the UN. You've agreed to that? Oh, so sorry.
Right. And isn't Obama the acting UN Secretary General?
You would have to ask me a question I don't know the answer to.
No, he is. He is. Which was a huge discrepancy when he was elected and he took that seat in the UN. Whether it was constitutionally allowed or whatever the case may be, that was an argument that was brought to the attention of some people. Doesn't really matter because we know that he can do whatever he wants to do, basically. It's
there is no difference between the U.S. and the UN. Let's just get real about it, okay?
Right.
They put it on U.S. soil for a reason. And New York has already been called the capital of the world. And that's already in legislation that people aren't even looking at. D.C. is actually, well, I ain't going to get into that. That's a whole nother conversation. And they told them in the movies, too. Go watch the movie Family Man. Old movie by Cage and Tia Leone. Good movie, too, by the way. Very good movie. But
they actually have a cartoon out now that's called Family Man. And they throw out some pretty interesting information on that cartoon as well, if people ever get a chance to watch it. And they're telling you stuff in the cartoon.
They're telling people everywhere they can give them notice. They're required to give notice. Okay? Can't tell you why. They just are. It's a universal principle. They're required. They're not putting it out there and shining a beacon on it, but they are hiding it in plain sight. It's in front of everyone's face. Like this stuff here.
In the cartoon, the gentleman is an undercover agent for the CIA.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I haven't seen this thing. That one I don't know anything about that. I like the movies because the movies give you a lot in 2 hours period of time. A lot. And in the movie Family Man with Nicolas Cage, he said, back during Roman times, I would be in Rome. It was the center of the universe. New York is the capital of the world. That's what he said right in there. So let's just get real about what's going on the planet. Okay, other things here. Marriage and family relationships in relationship to national or being a national of a naturalizing country. So marriage is covered in these agreements. They all sign on to it. The U.S. tells you where it's at in their agreements. Now, the last thing I wanted to go to was page 99, and there's a specific reason for page 99. It had to do with equal footing, the doctrine of equal footing. And let's see if I can find that real quick. Where a naturalized citizen is not placed on equal footing. These are the nations where they're not. Nationalization Act, Australia, Belgium, Brazil. And guess who else is not? United States of America, Article 2, Section 1, 5th paragraph of the Constitution. Now there's a reason for that too, because they start talking about holding specific public offices, and see, that's the whole thing. You're not holding a public office. Or let's put it this way, you are holding offices of honor, trust, or profit if you have bank accounts like that, and you are a debtor under those agreements. We've covered that in other presentations on Banking 101, Banking 101A, Banking 102. But I'm sorry, 201. You have no immunity. Right. You have no political status. The congressmen, the ambassadors, and those kind of people do, although they are serving at the behest of the posterity, which means it can be withdrawn, it can be taken from them, and that's why you see Leo Wanta and Traficant and all them suckers in prison.
Absolutely, and that's actually covered in the Paddlefield case, right?
Yeah.
The states intended to give up their power of self-preservation, and that would also entail the representatives of those states.
Okay, let's see. There was another thing I was going to cover here. Let's see if it's covered down below. Expatriation, unconditional, by naturalization abroad. Now, let's go back to what we talked about with renunciation, where it said you had to renounce your citizenship. But if you read the 7th International Conference of American States, and we've come back now and said let's assume that that conference didn't exist, what happens when you expatriate? Naturalization abroad is unconditional. It means you're out. You are out. You don't have to do renunciation. Let's see where we want to go to from here. Let me go to my outline.
That's good. That's very good that you pointed that out.
Ooh, page 101 and 102. This had to do with fraud. Withdrawal of rights of citizenship on the ground of misrepresentation, fraud, disloyalty, or bad character. United States.
Which would include sticking your tongue out at the United States.
Well, renunciation would be one, but I'll go back up in just a second on this, okay? Section 15 of an act of this is where it is, okay? Now let's go back up to what this actually said. Withdrawal of the rights of citizenship on the ground of misrepresentation, fraud, disloyalty, or bad character. You sign up for a mortgage, you lied on that mortgage, told them that you already own the property. Is that misrepresentation?
That would be one example, yeah.
Can they charge you as an innocent person for a crime that never occurred and withdraw your civil rights because you did that?
Yeah.
See how this stuff all kind of glues together?
Right. I mean, it's a highly sophisticated.
Right now, Gary and I, you're going to hear the conversation that's going up today, before this one even goes up, and the conversation that's going to go up tomorrow you just listened to was me and Gary. They've already done their research on this. Gary and I have known each other for 12 years, and he's been doing this longer than I've been doing it. And he was trained as an attorney. And he's told me, based on their research right now, the average United States citizen commits 3 felonies a day.
Wow.
They can yank your citizenship and your civil rights anytime they get ready to.
Yep, absolutely.
Which is why they're building concentration camps, or FEMA camps, as they like to call them now. Now let's go to conditional expatriation. Means you're obtaining permission. That's 104 and 105. And we have talked several times about private international law, who's running what, how things roll down from the top, how it comes from private international law into public international law, and here's how it comes through this term. You'll find it in the 6th International Conference of American States, which I may actually post on this, but I don't know. I put the 7th on the last presentation. This is on page 114. Let me get there. But this is how it's done. They do private international law, and then look what they do next. The Code of Private International Law.
Okay.
International Civil Law, Titles, Persons, the Bustamante Code, and actually this is the 6th International Conference of American States that was actually annexed into the Hague Convention. Imagine that.
Right.
Because that conference was held in Havana, Cuba in 1928. 6th International Conference of American States, right here, pages 21 through page 23.
Yep, there you go.
Now, what does this have to say? There's a couple things in here I want to point out real quick. And this was the
Doesn't it go into the differences between citizens and nationals, the statelessness?
Actually, it does. Some, and I'll go into that, but we're going to cover a little bit more of it real quick here. Won't be a whole lot left of this, but there's a couple of items that we're going to get to with all those little links that I sent to Brad. This is the stuff we're going to go through because I really did want to turn this into a good study session, drive the points home, get the nail in the coffin, and get rid of this pretend idea that you can just leave the United States and march over to some country and you have escaped, because that ain't going to work that way. They're boxing this place in and setting the other countries so that you're going to have real good reason and probably real good assets. I have a friend of mine who just moved to Ecuador and is building a house down there. So Ecuador likes him. He's ingratiated himself with Ecuador. He don't have any standing yet, but he's working on it. National character defined. A national character of a person is his connection to a nation being one of its members, as explained in this charter. Every person has one national character. Every person has a national character. No person is a member of 2 nations at the same time, but any nation may extend to a member of another nation, with his consent, the rights and duties of its own members within its own jurisdiction, in addition to his national character. So that can be done. This is where you get what's called economic citizenship. It is that duality. But in the end, when they want to prosecute you or come after you, they're going to look at you and say what the first sentence said. Every person has a national character. No person is a member of 2 nations at the same time.
Very interesting. So what you're saying is basically you can have dual citizenship, but when it comes down to it, if there's ever a discrepancy, they're going to go to the former to prosecute you under that nationality.
Yeah.
But they will allow you to come to their country for economic purposes and have the same rights and duties as the nationals there at that time.
I'm not going to pull it up because let's use this as an extracurricular session on at this part. In the 7th International Conference of American States, if you look at the Treaty on Extradition, the Conference on Extradition, Extradition relates not to U.S. citizens that are traveling abroad. Extradition relates to if somebody from Panama came here, committed a crime, and got back to Panama, the United States wants him back up here, they have to go through extradition to get Panama to extradite its citizen back up here. Otherwise, Panama has to have a trial down there under U.S. law. Now, they do that just like they do in The Hague. Like they tried the guys that bombed Lockerbie, Scotland, or the plane up above Lockerbie, and they said, well, they can't get a fair trial in Scotland, so they moved it to The Hague and put up a Scottish flag in that courtroom. They've done that here in the U.S. They have had Japanese trials here on U.S. soil. They've had Chinese trials here on U.S. soil. How do they do that? They put up that flag in that room. That's it. We're now under that law, the law of the flag.
Didn't they try Saddam here as well?
No, they did that over there. They didn't do it in Iraq. But my point here is extradition is not for the U.S. citizen. By treaty, if they ask for you, they have to turn you back over. That's it. So if you've left, you haven't gone through naturalization or renounced your U.S. citizenship through naturalization, not through renunciation, where you've obliterated the tie, then they can just have you sent back. It's important because people are going to go out here. There's a lot of millionaires out here. People fleeing this country right now. They're trying to get away, and they're hiring attorneys to do this kind of stuff. For instance, they're hiring people like the Casey Research Institute, or their recommendations of people that come from the Casey Research Institute, because the real question is, who is this David Parker Williams guy? We're listening to the Casey Research Institute. Them guys been around a lot longer than you. I looked at their document and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And
Right.
I want everybody on this website to have that attitude that, wait a minute, I read that document. Yeah, I agree. You got to be kidding me. Who would do this?
Right.
All right.
And I think ultimately you do this out of the kindness of your heart to help people understand and keep them out of prison.
Oh, it's like Dario. I mean, he was a national from another country. I helped him, and there's a lot of people on the website now that are members that I've helped. Not because I'm anything special. It's just that when I read about peaceful settlement of dispute in the international law, that made my heart sing, man. It made me want to get up and dance around the room. It's like, wow, there's a way we can go to peace here? Absolutely. Let's get on board with that program.
I was actually doing handstands. I don't know about dancing, but
Yeah, and so, there's a fun part of this. You find out things they hit you in your core being, and it's like, wow, man, this is great. So when you start applying those principles, and I want to bring this up and mention somebody, Ben, really on board with this, and we've become friends through this kind of process too. I think we've known each other 18 months now, and he started reading the Law of Nations, and he actually has gone into the whole part in there about reconciliation and negotiation and all those things that are in the Law of Nations about making peace among nations, and he's been applying all those principles to his interpersonal relationships, and you know what he told me?
what's that?
They work.
They're all flourishing.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
The law of nature. Nature's God.
there you go. Now, let's go to allegiance. Allegiance is the obligation of fealty and obedience which a person owes to the nation of which he is a member or to its sovereign. Stop right there. That's it. You owe your fealty and obedience. Period.
Right.
If you're an American and you're a U.S. citizen, you owe your obedience. It's your promise. We've already covered that. Extinguishment of allegiance, I'm not even going to go through it. People can read this. Where are we going to go next? Expatriation defined. Expatriation is a right. You have the right of it. Now that was confirmed over here in Article 15. Everyone has a right to nationality, and they cannot be denied to change his nationality. See how this, I'm doing this because you see the back and forth here, how it goes from one document to another document, and all the principles keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, let me pause here for 1 second. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay, we're back.
I'm trying to find where it says it. Here it is. Okay. The sovereign by the fact alone that it is always what it must be. But this is not true of subjects toward a sovereign, to whom in spite a common interest, nothing binds them to their engagements unless means are taken to assure their fidelity.
Fidelity means honor.
Right.
And that's good.
Or, an oath or allegiance or like the public faith being pledged. These are all the same ideas, same concepts, different words.
Okay, let's get into finishing this up. Effective naturalization. Again, if the OAS conference was done away with, we got this conference here, 1930, right in The Hague. Obviously, the United States of America is party to it. It's all over the place. A person naturalized according to the provision of this section becomes immediately a member of the nation by which the naturalization is conferred, but he must, within a reasonable time thereafter, send a copy of the record of naturalization to the public minister or consul of the nation to which he previously belonged, resident in the territory of the nation which thus adopts him. See, it's an adoption. You get adopted, like child.
Like substitute father?
Yes, exactly. Parens patrie.
Yeah.
Now, the point here is that, remember Article 2 said that you have to notice the other state back, and otherwise, if you haven't noticed the other state back, that's a problem. You can still be considered a member of the other state because you haven't finished the process.
Yeah.
And this says specifically, till this is done, the nation or sovereign which he has left may reclaim him.
Very important.
All I'm doing is coming back and reiterating points that we covered just so that we make sure that we've covered it. Liability on return. A naturalized person who voluntarily returns within the territorial limits of a nation in which he was a member for his naturalization remains liable to trial and punishment for an act punishable by its laws committed before his expatriation. So that means they get you back over here, you can still be punished.
Right. If you did something prior to your leaving that was dishonorable, they can still try you.
And if you become
Absolutely.
naturalized down there, here's the deal. It goes back to the same thing. If they bring the charge down there and they don't extradite you, then they have to prosecute you on U.S. soil. Dog the Bounty Hunter, everybody praised this dude for pulling that rapist out of Mexico. He violated international law, violated Mexican law while he was down there, and Mexico wanted him back. They said, we want your citizen down here. Extradite him down here. Well, obviously he was the big American hero, so people got ticked off about it, and they were protesting, and he brought the guy back, and how can you send him down there, and so forth and so on. Well, you know what the U.S. did? They did send him back down there. You know why? Because if they didn't, they were going to have to try him on U.S. soil under Mexican law, and if you think they were mad about extraditing him, what do you think the American people would have been like if they saw him being prosecuted under Mexican law here in the U.S.?
On U.S. soil. They'd be livid.
See, you can't give up all these secrets to your subject citizens.
Wow.
That don't want to take the time to go read international law and understand why things happen the way they happen. Now, he was eventually let go. They did not ever try him in Mexico, but they did send him down there. Mexico released him right back. I would love to know the political payoff that Mexico got for this. Because in the end, why would Mexico care that he got a rapist back up to the United States? They really didn't. What they cared about was that he assaulted their national character and their national sovereignty, and that was a stain on the United States. I don't know how they've resolved the problem. It's called private international law. They're not going to tell me, and they're not going to tell you, and they will not tell the population. The population. Okay. Expatriation, page 121. Oh, we've already been through all this. Okay.
Here's something on expatriation. Expatriating a U.S. citizen subject to the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment on the ground that after reaching the age of 18, the person has obtained foreign citizenship or declared allegiance to a foreign state generally will not be possible absent substantial evidence apart from the act itself that the individual specifically intended to relinquish U.S. citizenship. An express statement of renunciation of U.S. citizenship would suffice. Now, I don't remember where I got that from, but basically what it's saying, absent substantial evidence, you're not going to be able to renounce your citizenship through expatriation and naturalization. You have to provide substantial evidence of why.
Ooh, so they're changing the rules. Well, I know why they're changing the rules, because they don't want any of these absconding debtors getting out of here by just leaving, $250,000 mortgage behind and going off somewhere else and not paying it.
Right, exactly.
I mean, state your reason, remember, right of self-determination, state your cause. Same thing true with naturalization, state your cause. Oh, I'm leaving because I'm $500,000 in debt and I'm ready to tell the bankers to... No, that don't work.
And then the right of expatriation, Section 1999, whereas the right of expatriation is a natural inherent right of all people, indispensable to the enjoyment of the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and whereas, in the recognition of this principle, this government has freely received immigrants of all nations. Therefore, any declaration, instruction, opinion, order, or decision of any officer of the United States which denies, restricts, impairs, or questions the right of expatriation is declared inconsistent with the fundamental principles of this republic. So telling you can do it and we're not going to get in your way, but you better tell us, there better be a good reason why you're doing it, because you owe us money.
Everybody here is a debtor. Everyone here is a debtor, and they owe their fair share. E pluribus unum, one out of many. You owe part of the $12.3 trillion that Obama just spun up if you're a U.S. citizen.
I would say a good reason is not to be arbitrarily deprived of these specific rights and be under private monopolistic powers.
Well, yeah, there is that with the private monopolistic powers, and that being a reason. But the question is do you want to state your cause through enunciation, naturalization, or the right of self-determination? That's the real question.
There you go. Very good, David.
Okay, let's get this wrapped up. Principles concerning nationality. Now, the reason I pulled down to this section here is this Appendix 8. This was another whole convention. Guess where it was done? Japanese branch of International Law Association. Oh, wow, they put the OAS in here. Now they're going to the Far East. They're going to put what these people have to say about it. Here's what they say about it. Every person should possess one and only one nationality. Wow, this dual citizenship thing is just really out the window, ain't it?
Yeah.
And page 127. This was the last note I made. See what's down here, 127. Schedule of points drawn up by the League of Nations. My point here is, do you see how voluminous this is? This is a lot of work that a lot of people did. A lot of people. A lot of men, a lot of scholars, a lot of degrees floating around just to get this one convention in place, done, signed, ratified by all the countries that you see there. Lots of time, lots of travel, lots of dignitaries, lots of ambassadors, lots of meetings, hour upon hour upon hour, debate after debate after debate after debate. Where do we hear this on U.S. soil, right? Last time I heard anything about hours and months and weeks and years of debate was constitutional conventions.
Yeah.
Declaration of Independence. They've been looking at writing a Declaration of Independence for over 20 years. And Patrick Henry, he wrote the Virginia Resolves about the Stamp Act and all the other stuff going on all the way back in 1767. From 1767, from the time they were being disgruntled then, which they were already disgruntled, but from the time they were being disgruntled then, 7 years. 7 years. The point is, people got to compress their time frames. That's what my goal is with the website. Let's get this thing compressed. If anybody's been through this presentation, it's probably over an hour long by now. This is a massive study, what you and I just did, Joey.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, so let's
turn the TV off and get to work. There's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Now let's look at some other things here real quick. Specific Islands Treaty Series. Guess what this one's about? Conflicts of nationality laws. Oh, this is a whole nother IGO, like the UN, like the OAS. Here's another writing. Nationality of juridical persons in the ICSID Convention in light of its jurisprudence. Recorded Max Planck Institute for Comparative Public Law and International Law, University of Chile. Now let's get into something that's really good. In the process of doing all this study, find a good book. Guess what it's on? Nationality and Statelessness in International Law. That stateless word's coming up quite a bit here recently, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is if you're getting the right information and being pointed in the right direction.
I want to cover one thing.
There's a lot of wrong information out there, you know.
Absolutely. I really only want to cover one thing in this book that I found. It was on page 4. This was the final proof that I said I was looking for with one thing, one particular item. This is on nationality, by the way. Let's go up here to the chapter. Nationality and its synonyms, chapter 1. Nationality and citizenship. So he takes 3 pages here to explain what nationality actually is. And then gets down to page 4. The English term subject is used as a synonym for national.
Can you please say that again?
The English term subject is used as a synonym for national. It stresses the quality of the individual as being subject to the sovereign and is typical of feudal concept of nationality prevailing in the Anglo-Saxon law, which regards nationality as a territorially determined relationship between subject and sovereign, by which the subject is tied to his sovereign, i.e., liege lord, the king in person, by bond of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag. There's your allegiance again. Liege lord. This conception differs from the Roman one prevailing in the states, which derive their law from Roman law, where nationality is not determined by the territorial link but is purely a personal relationship. It is usually acquired by descent and connotes not a relationship to the sovereign but membership of a state, which in itself is conceived as a personal association or corporation of member individuals. So the state here is either personal association or corporation. It's always been that way, Joey. Everybody talks about this republic as if it's anything other than a corporation, and never has been. It's either a corporation or an association. If you go in the legal dictionary and look at this, do you think there's any difference between these two terms?
Absolutely not.
Oh, you didn't think you could be owned by a corporation, huh? They told you in the Truman Show that it was the first time ever in history that a baby was bought by a corporation. Get real. Hence, other reasons.
Well, I mean, doesn't it have to do with how that particular corporation or association is assembled, as far as determining how it affects that member individual?
Well, of course. But there is no other place where nationality is not looked at as subject.
Right.
Nowhere on this planet. The people who run things, the posterities, the ones that have political power, political rights versus civil rights of nationals, residents, citizens, and aliens, and of course the stateless have no rights. This is a difference. Sovereign immunity, diplomatic immunity, granted civil rights can be ungranted.
Right. And the same goes for citizens, subjects, nationals, aliens, and the stateless people as well. They're all in the same boat. Just up the creek with no paddle.
Oh yeah, that's people have railed and railed and railed against this system based on a false program and a false perception of what they were trained in public schools and what their preachers and teachers and parents and everybody else trained them, because after generation after generation after generation, this is so generationally ingrained in people that it's really hard to break. And I know it's hard to break, but for me, I broke it in 1999 with one simple phrase that I read: how can you be allied with the unrighteous king who frames all of his evil by decree? That principle to me was a universal principle, and so enrooted in my brain, I left the United States, moved to St. Kitts, and for whatever providential reason it happened, I had to come back here to fight legal battles because I could not do it in St. Kitts. My phone bills were $5,000 a month for 10 months, sometimes $7,000 a month. I couldn't fight the legal battles down there. I had to come back here, had to sell the house, and in a place, when I say providentially, in a place where houses were selling on average every 2 years down in Frigate Bay, in that part of the resort area, because it was very slow. Most of the clientele came out of England. The house behind us had been for sale for 4 years. Our house sold in 2 weeks. She fasted a week, I fasted a week. Actually, the other way around. I fasted a week, she fasted a week. Next week, somebody comes in with an offer.
Very good. Very good.
You know, there's a movement and a power behind all of this. And I've seen it for all these years, the work that we did in the federal courts, the stuff that we did in sending things to the World Court, to the UN. And it ain't over yet. The work's just now beginning. People are always looking for, when can I stop? It's planet Earth. You can't ever stop. You stop when they put you in the ground.
Right. We're trying to get the paddle back so we can start steering our own boat. Take the paddle out of Uncle Sam's hands, because I'm tired of getting spanked by it.
Yeah, they got a big paddle, don't they? They got a club, Sam's Club.
Yeah.
Okay. The last thing I want to point out here about this subject thing, this was actually U.S. case law, and it says that it has, however, become usual to employ the term citizen instead of subject in Republican states, including common law countries such as the United States, where it said, he who was before was a subject of the king is now a citizen of the state. And in that sense, in those states, the terms nationality and citizenship must be regarded as synonymous. Get my language correct here. Synonymous. Okay. Case law here, State versus Manuel. Here's where it's published. Minor versus Happersett. Let's move on to the last thing. This is, give people a web link. You can see it up here. The social contract. Go online, look up this book. This is going to become, I believe, really appreciate you finding this, Joey. This is almost a primer for being a part of a social compact. I would say books like this are things that the founding fathers of the USA probably read about social compacts, social contracts, the law of nations, but this is the beginning. And on that note, Joey, why don't we just say that this is the end of this particular recording, and we'll have pretty much covered nationality, except when I go through the files on the KC Research Institute, just to show people that you can't believe everything out there that these other organizations and other people are putting out, because unless they do this kind of study in law, unless they're studying international law, and most of them don't, they get their information from the United States, like going to read things like renunciation, okay? And they actually tell you, and I'll show it to you, they actually tell you that you have to renounce your U.S. citizenship, and we've already proven that it's not required. So on that note, hang on, we'll put an end to this.